Hello there. My name is Mike Ryder. I am a solutions architect here at N2WS. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to perform a full AMI redeployment and upgrade of your N2WS or CPM instance. So this is not a patch upgrade. This is a full AMI upgrade. So essentially what's going to happen is we're going to capture all your configurations. We're going to, get your VPC subnets. We're going to get your volume ID. So everything that we do is stored on a separate EBS volume, which is our data volume, and everything like that. So we're going to get all those configurations, and then essentially what we're going to do is we're going to terminate the old instance, and which is everyone's favorite part, and then we're going to redeploy it from the marketplace. Okay, so um, which is always going to have the latest version available to you. So first thing we need to do before we even get into AWS, we need to log into the CPM console, and there's a couple things that we need to check. One of them is the backup monitor. We need to make absolutely sure. So there's two non-negotiable rules to this process. Non-negotiable. One, you cannot have any backups running here. So anything under status or DR status that is in progress, you cannot do the upgrade while that is in progress. So there's no, oh, I'll just pause it, and maybe do it later. That can cause issues later down the line, and we do not want to do that. So do not do that. Okay. Now, if your lifecycle status, so if it's archiving to S3, you can cancel that. So you would just select it, and this is grayed out because I don't have anything running right now, but you can select abort copy to storage repository, and that will cancel this with no issue. But if either of these are running, you cannot do the upgrade while they're in progress. So now if you have a crazy amount of policies and all kinds of backups running at all different times, and it's hard to do to get to have a window, what you need to do is come to policies, and you would need to select whichever policy it is that are policies. And so, for example, this one, come in and edit, and you're going to disable it right here. So you want to make sure that you give it a well enough time so where you're going to disable it and save it. This is still loading, but that's what you want to do. You want to make sure that this policy is disabled, and then save it, and then done. So that policy is not going to run until you re-enable it. Okay. I'm going to re-enable this because mine doesn't run until, again, till tomorrow. Okay. So anyway, that's what we want to do. So we want to go to the backup monitor, make sure that there are 0 backups running, make sure you're all the way down here. And then the other one is we're going to come up to here. And one thing I always like to check, and you may or may not, and it's usually not, but if we go to the proxy tab, some you know some people have the proxy enabled, so they're using a proxy. I always just like to check it just in case. Some people they forget it. So, and they like to, yeah, don't worry about it. And we're not using a proxy. I always like to check it, but that's on you. And then if we go over here to users, this is another non-negotiable. So where we have this user that says admin root, we need to make sure that we know this username exactly, because we need that to be able to move forward in the upgrade. The password is not necessarily an issue. We can change that later, but this username is a non-negotiable. So those are the two non-negotiables, right? So I just want to make that very, very clear. We need to make sure that we know the admin root username, and we need to make sure that there are 0 backups running in your CPM console before we start this process. Or they're not going to kick off anytime in the next couple minutes, right? Because the next thing we're going to do is, okay, we're done here. We're going to jump over to AWS. We're going to find the N2WS instance, and we're going to stop. If there are upgrades or I'm sorry, backups in progress, and stopping this instance will terminate them prematurely, and that is not something you want to do. Okay, so it's stopping. So while that's stopping, here's what we want to do. We want to drag this window up. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit so we can see some more of it. Okay, so everything that we see under instance summary right here is almost everything that we really need. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a screenshot, and this is what I recommend. So just right here, this is everything that we need. Done. And then you can either copy that into a Word doc, which is usually what I do. And then, so what I'm doing here, but I already had it open. I apologize. Just going to copy that in. Okay. So next, we want to go to security. Now the role is already included in that screenshot, so we don't need to copy that right now, but we do need your security group or groups, especially if you have multiple security groups. You want to make sure, I recommend just hitting the copy button. You could take a screenshot of them. I recommend copying them as an ID, because later on when we go to select them, when we deploy the instance, it's a lot easier just to copy and paste this, especially if you have a lot, if you have a whole bunch of security groups, it's a lot easier just to copy and paste them in and search for them that way. And then I like to go to tags. I don't have any tags, but if you do have tags, especially those that are required tags to launch an instance, you need to make sure that we need to integrate those tags as we launch the instance. There's been a lot of customers that it slipped their mind, or just oh, it's fine, it's not a big deal, we can do them later, and then the instance gets terminated upon creation because, oh, there is a tag, that's right, I forgot, that we need to make sure that is configured before we actually launch the instance. So that's super important. And like I said, if it's not important to you, if you want to do it later, that's fine. But that's just something to note. And then lastly, we're going to go to storage. So we have two volumes here. So this top one, the SDA one, that's our root volume. So we don't need that. What we want to look at is the SDF, the bottom SDF volume. So this is where everything that we have configured, all our backups, everything are configured and stored here. So I like to open this up in a new tab. And we'll let this open. So we have it here, so we're going to select it. So now the first thing we're going to do is go to actions and we're going to create a snapshot here. And we always want to, always want to take a backup of this volume before we run the upgrade process. If for some reason, which is very rare, but if something does go wrong, typically it corrupts the volume and we need to create a new one, right? So what I like to do is create a snapshot just manually from AWS. So it's out even out of N2WS. It's just there on its own, just in case. So we'll just do like an N2WS pre-upgrade or whatever you like to do. So people like to date it. That's fine. Tag it if you need to, but we're going to create a snapshot. So we're going to come up here and we're going to select the snapshot ID up in this green banner. Okay. And we're going to watch this progress bar that really does nothing. It's going to sit here until it hits 100%. So, but we'll give it a second to do that. Okay. So it has finished 100%. So now we're going to click on this volume here. So this is the initial data volume that we just took a backup of, essentially. So now there's two ways you can do this. If you're on a more recent version, you can simply just detach this volume. And then just click refresh and you'll see it's available. So you'll detach that from the instance. Or if you're on a much older version, or if you are doing this by yourself and you're not sure, even if you're on a more recent version, I would recommend going back to the snapshot and creating a new volume from the snapshot. So typically all the initial, metadata will be there. So you always want to make sure you're in the right AZ. So I'm going to go and make sure. So I'm in 2C, which is not 2A. I'm going to select 2C, or else your CPM is not going to be able to find it. You can encrypt it at this time if you'd like. If it's already encrypted, it would already be there. Tag it if you'd like, and then we're going to create this volume. So now either way, if you detach the volume, this is the initial volume, or create a new one, you always want to make sure that we get the volume ID. This is very important. Okay, so I'm going to use this new volume since I created it. So then, yeah, and then so now we're going to go back to the instance, do a refresh. That data volume should be gone. There it is. Okay, so now what we're going to do is terminate this instance. So if you are on a BYOL direct, and this is how you find out, right? So if we go to marketplace, and we'll go to the marketplace. Let it spin for a minute. So these are going to be your marketplace subscriptions. So if you have a whole bunch, it's a lot easier just to do a search for N2WS. Obviously, we don't have to do that here. So here's my BYOL. Okay. So now another really good tip, if you're using a private offer in AWS, right? And you're going through the marketplace, but you're just doing a private offer through us, and you have a private offer listed anywhere here, you do not want to launch it from there. Okay, it's a completely different charge. They charge you completely differently in AWS, and it could charge you um, a lot more money than it's supposed to. Okay, so that's my disclaimer. So anytime you have that and you see a BYOL here, doesn't don't worry about the free trial. What you're looking for is here, BYOL. Then you want to launch it from that. Okay, but if you see a marketplace instance that just says Advanced Edition or Enterprise Edition or Standard Edition, um, you'll launch it from that. Okay, so now with a BYOL, if you're launching it from this, you don't have to terminate this right away, unless you want to use the same IP address and internal IP, private IP address. Then you'd have to. But if you have a marketplace subscription that you're paying monthly, like a standard, advanced, or enterprise, you have to terminate this instance before you deploy the new one. If not, it will go into recovery only mode, and it won't recover. It'll work for recoveries, but it will not back anything up. Okay, until you terminate it and perform a failover. So we're just going to say we're going to assume you're on a monthly subscription, and we're going to terminate this instance. Okay, so I'm just going to go to instance state and terminate. So now I see termination protection is enabled, right? And then if you see down here, elastic IPs. So when you terminate this, it should automatically disassociate and release your elastic IP. But here, when it says termination protection enabled, it's going to fail when you go to terminate it. So you need to come up to actions, instance settings, change termination protection, and then uncheck enable and save. Let's get rid of those. So now we're going to try it one more time. Terminate. And successful. Okay, so it's shutting down now. So now what you want to do is go back to your subscriptions. You find your subscription, which is mine's going to be BYOL, and just click launch. And this is going to bring you to this preemptive screen. So delivery method is always going to be AMI, and then the software version should always be the latest. So in this case, this is 4.3.1. And then we need to make sure you're in the right region. It's always going to default to US East 1. So I'm in US East 2, as you can see right here. So I'm going to switch to that. Where is it? Okay, there it is. Okay, so US East 2, that's Ohio. I know you can drop this down and you can see like the most recent ones, but 4.3.1, that's going to be this, in this case, is the latest, but it should always populate the latest version. And then we're going to continue to launch, and this is going to bring up the AM or the instance deployment. Configuration. Okay. So we're going to name the server. So it's going to be N2WS. It could be, the version or whatever your naming convention might be. And then here's your tags. So like I mentioned earlier, if you have, specific tags that you need upon creation, super important, this is where you add them, right? So just add new tags and you do that right here. Okay. So I'm not going to do that because I don't need them. The AMI, we already selected that. So that's ready to go. So CPM 4.3.1, or whatever the version might be. So instance type. So this is where you want to get into the screenshot that we initially took, right? So in my case, it's a T3 large. So that's what I'm going to use. But we want to make sure we're at least the same, if not larger. If you can go bigger, that's cool. Um, if not, I'm just, typically the same is fine. Key pair. So this is important. You need to make note of your key pair. And that is actually something that I forgot, and that is my fault. So if you go and you need to you want to make sure that you know what key pair you're using, and it doesn't necessarily matter if you're using the same exact one. Um, as long as you have one that you have access to, and you know where it is, and you have access to it, that's fine. If not, you can just create a new one. So I'm going to just go to my default key. And then network settings. So this is also super important. We need to make sure we're on the same VPC and the same subnet. So I'm going to click edit over here, and I'm going to drop this down. I'm going to make sure I'm on the right VPC. So I'm looking at my screenshot. It is 1D81. Yes. So now subnet, it ends with 7188. So I'm going to drop this down, find 7188. Okay. And auto assign public IP. If you're just using a public IP, that's fine. I'm using Elastic IP, so it's static and never changes. So I'm going to reassociate that, and I'll show you how to do that as well. Or you can just assign a dynamic IP, and that's fine too. Or if if you weren't using a public IP at all previously, and you'll see that again all in that screenshot that you took, you can just disable that and use the new public IP or private IP. Now, security group, you already had a security group assigned to it. So we're going to select use existing, and we're going to find that. And that's where I told you to copy the security group ID. So that's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to drop this down, and I'm just going to paste this in, and then here we go. And then it could be, like you could have multiple security groups, and that's fine. If you did terminate this instance and you need to use the same internal IP address just for maybe DNS purposes or anything like that, you drop down at advanced network configuration. You don't have to worry about anything over here at all. Just make sure that it's the same private IP right here in primary IP. It doesn't matter for me, so I'm just going to leave that blank. But that's all you need to do. So don't worry about selecting any additional security groups because we already did it up here. Or unless, you have some crazy configuration, but typically it is what it is. So all you need to do is input the new IP or the same IP. So we'll drop this down, configure storage. Typically 30 gigs, unless you're a huge enterprise company, 30 gigs is the default. We always want to make sure that it's on GP3. And the whole reason for that is it's just far more efficient and it's cheaper than a GP2. So there's no reason not to use it. I'm surprised they don't default to it. Okay. And now remember when we created the volume and detached the volume, and we have the option to do that here. We are not going to do that here. This is one of the biggest pitfalls that I've seen people do that did it by themselves, is they think, okay, we're going to attach the volume, that data volume, that secondary data volume to the instance here. We are not going to do that here at all. Okay, so we're going to do that later on when we run the initial configuration and we get the instance up and running. Okay, so do not attach the volume here. But then we're going to drop down advanced details. And then the second drop down here, we're going to select your IAM role. So that's also going to be on your screenshot. And at the bottom left, you'll see IAM role. So mine is named N2WS role. And then you're always going to want to enable termination protection. And that's really all you need. And if you need some detailed CloudWatch, you can do that. You know, if there's anything specific you need for compliance purposes, you know, that's fine too. But that's really all we need as far as, you know, just bare minimums, right? So then we're going to launch the instance. Okay, awesome, launched. I'm going to click on this. Close that. This Sash, I'm going to use the new one, so I'm going to close that. Okay. All right, so now if you look here, so I made it too big. You'll see I'm using Elastic IP right here, right? So now what I'm going to do is go back. We're going to do Elastic IPs. Here's my CPM server, 213.50. I'm going to go to actions. I'm going to make sure that this disassociate is not, it is grayed out. We want it to be grayed out, right? So it should automatically release it. So if it's not, we want to make sure we click on that and disassociate that IP address. And then we're going to associate. We're not going to allocate, and we're also not going to release. Okay, so releasing it is going to make that disappear. So it's disassociate, okay, and then associate. That's it. That's all you want to do. So I'm going to click associate, choose the instance. If you have a whole bunch of instances, you could just copy the instance ID. Mine is going to be this new 431. And you could just choose a private IP address, should automatically choose it for you, and then associate. Okay, successful. I'm going to go to my instance. And here's my new server. Here's my Elastic IP. So I can just click on this. I could click open address, or I just click on this and open it in a new tab. Always make sure you put HTTPS in front of this, HTTPS in front of this. Sorry, force of habit. Okay, and then advanced, and then accept and continue. So that's what we want to see. So first thing it's going to show you is we want to copy the instance, the new instance ID into here. Accept the EULA. Hasn't changed in a while, so we're just going to read and accept. You are more than welcome to read it if you'd like. So if you're doing an upgrade and you have a BYOL license, you're always going to select this is already licensed. If you are on a monthly subscription, you're not going to even have this option. So don't worry about this, but that's only if you're on a BYOL, but you want to make sure you say this is already licensed. Okay. So now the username This is where we go back to where I specified at the beginning of the video. We need to make sure that this is the correct root admin login name. Okay. So this is optional. You can configure this later, but password, you can obviously use the same password, or you can even change it here if for some reason you forgot it. Okay. And then your time zone. So whichever time zone you want the server to run on, mine's going to be Eastern. So I'm just going to go to United States and then New York. So it could be, Central. If you scroll down, here's Chicago. We have Mountain. Here's Denver, Phoenix, and then we have Los Angeles for Pacific. So there's all your basic US. And then, we'll have your Canada, anything you need. Right. So I'm going to select New York. So this here is the data volume, right? So we're not going to create a new data volume because this is going to start you over from scratch. So we want to make sure we select use existing data volume. And this is where when I told you copying that data volume ID comes into play. So force recovery mode, we're going to select no there because that's going to make it to where the server can only perform recoveries and not backups. And then proxy, unless you're using a proxy like we looked at earlier as well, we're going to keep this disabled. Or if you need to use a proxy, you can enable it and enter your proxy information here. But we're going to keep this disabled. Click next. All right. So now existing CPM data volume. So this is the volume ID we want to make sure that matches what we copied in previously. So I'm going to come over here to my document and it ends in DC52, which is this one. So it's going to show anything available. So anything that's not available, it's not going to even show here. So that's when I tell you if you attach that volume preemptively to the instance, it's not going to show up here. And you're going to select the wrong volume, it's going to fail on you, and you're going to go to support. So this is the whole reason we have this, right? So this is the volume that I want. It's going to be 443. SSL cert. So if you have an SSL certificate that you want to upload, this is the easiest way to do it. This is just looking for the cert file and then the key file. It is possible to do it afterwards. It's a little more labor involved. You'd have to SSH onto the instance and copy the files on and do it that way. So if you do have them, I would recommend getting them ready before you do the upgrade. Much, much easier to do it here. Anonymous usage reports. This is just kind of giving us some anonymous stats. I mean, we don't know what you're backing up or when, but just kind of gives us, they're backing up this many resources and that's about it. So you can always click no, not allow, no big deal. And then next, and then registration. So you're always going to end up registering, but when you first install, so you can always re-register if there's maybe, if you're a new contact or anything like that, that's perfectly fine. If you're the same person that's been using it for years, you can just check on I will register later. And then you're going to configure your system and then you're going to give this a minute. Certain upgrades take longer than others. Just whatever you do, do not refresh. Don't do anything. One thing I like to point out too is if you're a Mac user and you're using Safari, for some reason, Safari, this does not spin. It just sits there in one spot the entire time. So it looks like it's not working, but it is. So please just let it go and just wait until it either says, yep, successful or not. But 9 times out of 10, it's going to be successful. So I will give this a few minutes to finish, and then we'll come back. All right, and this is what you want to see. Configuration successful. It's going to automatically create a new snapshot of the data volume, and then just give it a few seconds and it will prompt you to log in like this. So enter in your credentials and sign in. And those are the root credentials, by the way. That's what I was referring to earlier. So now if you're on a BYOL license, it's going to look like this. It's going to look a little different. If you're on a subscription license, it's going to automatically populate everything and look completely normal right off the bat. But if you're on a BYOL license, it's going to take a few minutes to reach out, excuse me, and sync up with our license server. So that could take up to 5 minutes. So we'll give it a few minutes to do that. So in the meantime, the last step is to update your IAM policies. All right. And to support all the new features, enhancements, stuff like that. So we'll jump back over to AWS and we'll open up the role that's attached to the instance. And we got the volume, so we don't need this anymore. So now what I want to do is get all the latest permissions. All right, so we have a KB, which I have right here, but we can provide for you, or you can do it, search for it on our website and our KB library. So what I want to do, I'm going to open this in a new tab. So required minimal permissions. It's going to tell you, how to implement it, or then you can just watch this. And then if you come down here to this attachment, we want to click on this arrow right here. It's going to download a zip file that's going to contain a whole bunch of different JSON files. Just bear with me 1 second. I'll show you what that looks like. Here. So this is the file that's going to download, and it's going to have all the different JSON permissions based on which license tier you have purchased, right? So it could be an advanced license. You're going to use these three, and these are all going to be separate policies, right? And then enterprise or BYOL, so enterprise or enterprise plus, you're going to utilize these. Free, you're not really going to use. I mean, there's really not much to do with those. But then standard is our, is our bottom tier. But that's what that's going to be, right? So for example, if I have an enterprise license, so what I want to do is, well, open that in any it could be Notepad, it'd be Word. I'm going to use Word. Any text editor is fine. So you'll see all these JSON permissions. So what we're going to do is just do a Control A and copy. And then we're going to come back to this role. So now, depending on what version you were on previously, you may have 2, you may have 3. So if you have the 3 and they're just named generically, you can just overwrite them. So if we click on this, right, and I want to go to edit, and I want to make sure, so this is labeled number 1. I want to make sure this is number 1. So it is BYOL1. So I'm just going to delete and copy in, and then next, and then save. And you can do that all the way down. And close this, go back here, all the way down. Or if they're really old, or they're maybe labeled with version numbers Um, it doesn't matter. Or if you just have two and you want to overwrite the two, but you don't have the three, you would just create a new policy, and I'll show you how to create a new policy. So you just come over here to policies, open it in a new tab. And we're going to come over here to create policy. So we don't have to select anything here. I'm just going to click on this JSON tab. We're going to clear everything out of here and the same thing. So we're going to open the number one file. We're going to copy it, come in, paste it, right? And then next. And then you're going to give it a name. So because of my previous point of, being able to overwrite and just using this, reusing the same ones, I usually recommend doing something, generic, CPM, it could be advanced one. You always want to make sure you put a number at the end because there are going to be multiple policies. But whatever you want to name it, and before that, that's totally up to you. And then whatever description you want, and then we're going to create the policy. And you're going to do that for the other two as well. So same thing. Advanced 2, Advanced 3, Enterprise 1, Enterprise 2, whatever the case is, right? So then you're going to come to the role, and you're going to go to Add Permissions, Attach Policies, do another search. So I labeled mine CPM, so I'll do that. And that's not what I labeled it. There it is. So sometimes if you're in the same tab and you open it, you might not see it. You need to hit this little refresh button. So I'm going to click Advanced 1, Add Permissions. And then you could do that, for the other three as well. So one thing to note is I never recommend using inline policies because there's a significant character, I want to say shortage. So the managed accounts, you get a lot more out of it. But that being said, if you start piling more and more and more policies on this role, you're going to reach a limit, and it only allows so many policies per role. So if you do, so say for example, if you do, create new ones, you want to come in and, but before you do, you want to make sure you remove them. But I'm going to show you something before you do. Once you do that, you want to come and you get your new policies enabled. You're going to come back here. So we're still waiting on the license. So we're going to refresh. You periodically just need to refresh the page. Okay, so now we see it's totally different, right? So our license kicked in. I can come up here, go to About, right? So 431. And not only that, I don't want to download logs. We can see our license and server details. But what we want to do is come to the account section. So, okay, I just enacted these new policies. So now I want to come up here and click Check Account Permissions. Just give it a second. So this is what you want to see, all green, all the way down. So if you're seeing any red, chances are the provisions are not correct. And they just need to be fixed. So you can reach out to us, our support team, we can help you out. But and then you can, remove the older ones if you'd like. But you always want to kind of keep it cleaned up. So I'm going to remove this one that I just created. So now I have my 3, I have my SSM. That's all I really need. Right? And that's it. After that, you are all finished. You can go, to your backup monitor. You'll see all your backups, all your policies. Feel free to run a test backup, and just let us know if you have any issues, but um, pretty straightforward. So I hope this was helpful, and please let us know if you have any questions about this process. I highly recommend um, getting in touch with us. You would get on, with me or one of my awesome counterparts, and we will walk through this with you, for free. So, but that is up to you. But anyway, I hope this was helpful. And as always, thank you for using AWS and N2WS.